And I decided I'm just going to stay standing.
Call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? Did you have anything, Jeff?
Nothing changed from the last version I sent to you, which you have in
good.
front of you. So.
Good.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes, July 3rd, 23rd board meeting and August 6th work group session. Did anybody read them?
Yes.
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment period. Is there anybody that wishes to address the,
Yep.
Come on up, sir.
just come right up and introduce yourself and,
And if you-
Anderson, Crescent, Minnesota.
You can sit down and use the mic, that works
All
better.
right,
Yep.
I've never done this before.
No,
Oh,
that's
you're
fine.
fine.
And if you would just 5-6 inches to help when it picks
Okay.
up better. Thank you.
Dean Otterson from La Crescent, Minnesota.
okay,
And I'm here about this notice that, I live over on South 14th Street, but people in the neighborhood, we got this notice of a public hearing on Saturday of this week, or last week. And all we were given for time for public comment was yesterday,
For written public comment.
for written public comment, which is,
that's from this, from who's
this
the,
is about the Northern Natural Gas Company. They want to build on Marty and Marianne Zadow's property.
yep, I got a notice too,
And did you get yours on Saturday as well?
yes,
Yeah. So, the first thing, I mean, this isn't really proper notice,
no,
because I called yesterday to talk to this Aaron Locker, am I pronouncing his name right?
Yep.
And he was in a meeting all day. I know somebody from the office called him and relayed my phone number. I also emailed him with my phone number. I never got a response. So,
Dean,
Yes,
I
sir.
might just, and I don't know.
Yes,
for
sir.
sure, but I went to see Aaron this morning, and apparently his
today he's gone
mother
for
has,
surgery.
and so there may have been an issue.
Yesterday, he was at a meeting is what I was told.
Okay,
So, I mean, today, I know
so
he's
you
got
know about
medical.
that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did talk to the Northern Natural Gas people. I mean, I did a bunch of phone calls yesterday, and they're almost in agreement too that this hasn't been handled well as far as this notice. And I don't think Houston County has really done service to the people either. I mean, so what I'm asking, and I know other people in the area are gonna ask about this too, is that this needs to be postponed so that people can actually get information on, I mean, number one of the questions is why is a new one gotta be built? Why are you abandoning the old one? Is there an actual purpose for it? I mean, all those questions need to be answered, and the only way we can actually have conversation is,
Well, that's what the public hearing was be used for.
but the public hearing is also to decide whether to allow the easement.
Right.
So
It
if
would
we
also-
show up and we have no information, how can we have a discussion
Yeah.
as far as a proper discussion?
I think we all got a copy of this notice here because we also got it because I'm in the same area. And yeah, written notice shall be by Monday, August 12th. If you just got it Saturday, there's no way you could have a written there. Plus, the meeting is this Thursday, August 22nd.
Yeah, and I'm not
Next
so,
Thursday.
I'm not.
Next Thursday.
Next
Next
Thursday.
Next
Thursday.
Thursday, not this week, no.
No.
I'm not, and I don't understand why the late of getting the notice out. I don't, what the
Yeah,
situation is there.
Because there's
with-
no way you could check on anything.
I mean, that people should have had a little more than
They-
3 days to do that. I mean, you know, Aaron should have got that notice out sooner.
Is there a,
Holly said she sent the notices out on Wednesday. You didn't get it till
We
Saturday.
got it.
And
I
that's
got mine
probably
Saturday.
that's the way the mail
It's
works.
the,
these
it's the
days.
mail through, I mean, it goes to St. Paul or wherever now, and I
Right.
mean, that's out of your control, but the fact is nobody's had a chance to get any information on this, to have a discussion. I mean, I've gotten more because, I mean, I was talking to the folks down in Omaha about, I talked to Brian Kruger, he's the director of right-of-way for up here. And I got the most information from him, and he agreed that normally they actually do meet with the public before they even go for these things. And he doesn't quite understand why they didn't follow it. He kind of wishes they had done this in a different manner. So, as I said, the problem is the lack of transparency, because that's when the questions come up. What is this really all about?
Lack of information, yep.
And as I told him, I used to work for the Corps of Engineers, and when we did our ethics training, you had your legal status of ethics, but the bottom line ethics rule for us was, if it looks unethical, you don't do it. Just because it's all about, how does this appear?
Perception.
And there might be no ill intent with this, but when you start getting into layers of nobody giving you answers, what are people supposed to think? And there is a bigger question is, why? And why would you move it closer to houses where it's existing right now? It's within a few hundred yards, but this is actually putting it in somebody's backyard, and plus the group home is right there.
Yeah.
Is there any problem with us postponing it? Do we have the call-in?
You just have to have the
Yeah,
60-day rule comes into effect, and you have to,
But if we moved it another week
a week or two,
it would still be within the
The
60 days.
typical planning and zoning meetings are the third
of the month.
Thursday of the month.
Yeah, so it'd be actually moving it back a month.
Unless they had a special meeting,
Right.
which they could do.
And it's possible.
And Northern Natural Gas could agree to postponing it as well, couldn't they?
Well, if they agreed to a postponement, you can get an extra 60 days and go to 120 instead of 60. But
And part of what's driving them, according to this Brian Kruger, is they're just building the substation for Minnesota Energy. And so Minnesota Energy is also driving the need to get this done quickly. And that's become the whole thing. When I was talking to the folks in Aaron's office, they said they didn't even understand why is this being pushed so quickly? You know, there should be more time. I mean, let's look at what is the need for doing this? Is there an actual need?
Right.
And why that particular spot?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and if it's logical, if it makes sense, great. But let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But just in defense as far as planning and zoning, on the 22nd, we have the public hearing. That does not mean that they're gonna be
Right.
granted the conditional
They
use
could
permit
postpone it
automatically.
at that meeting.
The meeting
They
can
could.
put it
Yep.
off. And
But-
that's, the meeting is the time when all this information is supposed to be presented.
That's
But
that's
again,
what the
for
public hearing is.
us as the folks there, it's
Right.
nice to have this information before you go in, so you can actually have conversation.
Right,
As opposed to like Brian Kruger sitting there saying, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
right.
And then you just go, well, I think that's wrong.
Well, yeah,
You know?
but like Bob said, that's what this public hearing is for, is to get the information out to the public. It doesn't mean that it's gonna be granted that night. The plan commission has the right to say, well, we need more information and we need to.
And we're
move
kind of
on.
at that stage already though,
Yeah,
where people need more information and time.
To interject here, the planning commission can't grant anything. They're advisory.
right.
They advised whether the,
They recommend
Board.
a recommendation.
They recommend it.
That's,
It's up to you guys.
right.
So they won't be making a decision. It'll just be a
A
public hearing.
it's a
recommendation.
recommendation.
They'll make a recommendation.
But they also could delay their recommendation until
And
they get
again,
further.
they can't get honest feedback from the people involved though. And that's why I'm still saying, we didn't get adequate notice here to make any kind of intelligent conversation related to something that's going on in that neighborhood.
but I don't know as you're gonna get a whole lot of it.
That's,
You
need-
know who to call and made
I
made
figured it
calls.
out.
Yeah, the average person
Doesn't.
isn't gonna be able to do that.
And
No.
that's what would happen at the public
That's the
hearing.
public
That's where you'd get the information you need.
Well,
And so
according
what I'm
according
saying-
to Northern Natural Gas, they traditionally do this in advance just to avoid what's happening right now.
Right.
Okay.
And they failed to do so in this thing, and they're also saying they understand they've got a problem, and they're gonna be calling Minnesota Natural Gas. I told them, you call them and tell them they have a problem. You can't just come in and on your end, it's your job to defend us. And to get
Right.
the information, you're supposed to be the shield.
Right.
And right now, the perception in that neighborhood is, you're for some reason, and I mean, when I say this, I chuckled when I heard it. But again, perception is, why is the county board trying to rot this through? And I said, well, what would the county board have to do with this? But
I don't think it's a county board trying to ram it through, it's just,
It's a notice of a public hearing.
right, and I get that aspect of it, but also when people get it the way it was presented, again, it gets into the perception, and you've got people that already have their biases, and then it just kind of reinforces it. Instead, what I'm saying is, let's back off on this a little bit. I mean, I'm gonna have more conversation with Northern Natural Gas, so that actually we can have a conversation before the hearing, so people then can present, this is why I think it's wrong.
I think it should be, I think the public hearing should be tabled till September. Or, yeah, so it would be the third,
What's the procedure for doing that?
yeah, what is,
I mean, we're gonna have to
Can we
find,
even do that?
we're gonna
we
find,
have to send out another notice to everybody.
we gotta find out how to do that.
Yeah.
For the
Amelia,
moment,
do you know?
I think we'll check on it.
let me look into the ramifications of extending it. What I would say initially is the written deadline for submitting things, that's something we can extend to the 19th and give you some more time for written input. But I understand the need is to gain information, and so I will talk with Aaron, and we'll look at the ramifications of delaying the hearing and extending it out further.
There'd be no way to let people know about the 19th either without, they'd get it on the
They'd
18th.
get it.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
That's true.
And that's the mail system.
If we receive written feedback after the 12th, we won't discard
I
it.
guess the other question is, I don't know when the application came in,
Right.
starting the 60-day.
And that would be something else you could find
I
out.
don't
We
know.
gotta find that out.
We'd have to
too.
find that out too.
Yeah.
That's why I
I
said
know
I'd look
Aaron
into
was
it.
studying the issue, because I talked about it, he talked about it last week with me as far as the bluff and the slope and all of that business.
I still think I wouldn't be scared to have this public hearing, because that's where you're gonna get a lot of your information. And and it doesn't mean that
And I
something's
understand what
gonna
you're
get-
saying. I mean, I like to have my information before I go in to have a discussion.
Right, and you've been doing that. You've been talking to the people, the natural gas.
But we
people.
have a whole neighborhood
Right,
that has not.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, even the Zadows aren't really sure what's happening on their property. And when you've got the owners not really even being sure, and they still have concerns, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Putting it off, I'm not sure, other than a couple of you, how many people are gonna get more information until the public hearing.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean,
The public
You're
hearing would be a
contacting
good venue to find all your information out.
How many people come to these public hearings, though?
Well,
Quite a few usually.
quite a few.
Well, if it's a neighborhood issue,
a lot of people.
other
come.
than putting
And like-
sidewalk in, it might
Yeah.
get people there.
And like I said, I know some people that say they didn't even get notified, and they live even closer
Closer than,
to where this is going in. And so, then if you've got people that aren't even notified, again, is that the way to do business?
I'll look at whether or not we can postpone it and how to spread the word if we do. And then we will also reach back through Aaron to the requester and pass the concern of information and see if they can't reach out to you with more information.
Now, you guys need contact information
We'll
for
push
me, so you can get in touch with me when you do your investigation?
have
I know
all
we,
the-
I know we have your address.
We have, yes.
Perfect, yeah. And Aaron has my cell phone number.
Okay.
Too. So,
Okay.
I mean, when would I expect to hear something back?
I would say
Before the end of the week.
Yeah, before the end of the week.
Okay, perfect. And then, like I said, I'm gonna continue talking to Northern Natural, and if they're willing to send people out to chat with people as well, I mean, that would be something, we could set up with the neighborhood as well. So, but, I mean, that's all I can do on my end, but, I mean, you guys also, because you're the governing board, you carry a little bit more weight than I do.
Well, like I said, I'm part of it, and I didn't get the notice that anything was even going on until Saturday.
Right. And that's
And
just not
the
right.
gas line is right below our house.
And it wasn't, probably wasn't intentional on anybody's part, but again, it gets into the perceptions.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Okay, thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Otterson. Nice to see you.
All right.
Anybody else?
Make sure the computer's working for.
Pardon me?
No, I was wondering if anybody else.
Does anybody else wish to address the board at this time, at public comment period?
Any other public comment?
If not, we'll move on with Dr. Richard Reichert and Monica. This is our annual presentation.
It's over there, set
Yeah,
up there.
TV went burned out.
Oh, guys, we're over there. Yeah, one of our
Okay.
TVs died this morning.
Great, thank you.
Maybe the
No play on words there.
No
I'm gonna have to
no
update
examination.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to update my data now. Thank you, commissioners, for having us here today. My name is Dr. Ross Reichert. This is my assistant, Monica Kendall, and we're here for our annual review of the medical examiner information. And so, just sort of at a high level, this is what our office covers. So we're the Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner's Office. And so the dark blue counties are the counties that I'm the medical examiner for. The pale blue ones are counties that we get consult cases from regularly. And so we really do cover the southeast corner of Minnesota. So this is really key. So this is the list of our staff. So I'm the chief medical examiner, and then I have my assistant chief, Dr. Lynn, and then we just recruited a new forensic pathologist, Dr. Quinton. He has about 10 to 15 years of experience, and he was assistant chief medical examiner for Dallas County in Dallas, Texas. So he has a lot of good experience as well. Feel very fortunate to have him added to our team. Monica Kendall is our supervisor of our death investigators, assisted by Courtney Highland. But what's really key are the frontline investigators here in Houston County, Mike Hollinger and Bob Cooper, and they're really the front lines of people that are fielding phone calls, going to scenes, and really helping drive that process. So really, I cannot overstate how important those individuals are. And then they work with our other death investigators back in Rochester in our central office, and then we have under the Decedent Affairs, medical examiner, pathology reporting specialist, et cetera. That's our really administrative support. So it's really a big integrated team that puts together the medical examiner services. And so it's truly a team effort. So at a high level, this is the data for this year. And so we had 103 cases reported to us. We really like to have that low threshold, that we'd rather have someone out of abundance of caution let us know about something, and then we can investigate it and see if it really falls under our jurisdiction. At the end of the day, we did 17 post-mortem examination, 15 of which were autopsies, and then there were 79 cases that we did not certify after investigation. And so these are ones that were reported to us. We did some preliminary investigation, and then we released that back to the primary care physician to sign the death certificates. So again, we'd much rather have those reported to us. So to give you a sense of the sort of involvement we have, you had 137 deaths in Houston County in 2018, and we were involved in some way, shape, or form in about 75% of those cases. So again, it's sort of behind the scenes role of the medical examiner. So just as a sort of brief reminder of what all goes on death certificate, the two main things that we're filling out are the cause of death and the manner of death. And so the cause of death is the underlying reason why someone died. So it's their specific natural disease or trauma or what have you. The manner of death is the circumstances surrounding that death. And so there's 5 categories: natural accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. And then there's lots of other pieces of data in there that are really recorded for a number of reasons, many of which are for public health and epidemiologic
reasons. And who uses this? The immediate family does, obviously, for personal affairs, but it also is a long-term documentation for them, for their family, of, you know, what did my mom, grandmother, grandfather die of many years or generations ago. And so it's very helpful. Our data then rolls up to the Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Health, and then to the CDC. So when you see data like how many flu-related deaths did we have this year, or how many drug overdoses or opioid deaths, it really starts at this kind of grassroots level, and that's how it filters up to the national level. So here's the classification by manner of death. It's nice because we have had a number of years of data, so it's gaining some power from that. I will caution, as we go through this, we'll have a lot of statistics and a lot of rates, and because we're dealing with relatively small numbers, just be aware it can shift rates pretty dramatically just with the number of 1 or 2. So what you see here is the vast majority of deaths are natural, which is good. We have then followed by accidents and then suicides. So this is if you take all the non-natural deaths, and so this is suicides, accidents, homicides, etc., and you lump them together. And what really sort of jumps out here are the two big categories that we see here are from falls and motor vehicle accidents. And so falls is one that sometimes surprises people, and that's typically elderly individuals that have underlying comorbid diseases, and so they fall and they break their hip, or they hit their head and get bleeding on their brain or something like that. And so it does stand out, but it is a significant risk, particularly as our population ages. And then you have suicide by means, and so last year there were 4 suicides, 2 were with firearms and 2 were hangings. So we have inserted the data just sort of as a comparison across the nation and Minnesota. This data is 1 year old, so this is on 2017 data, just because that's what is available to us at the national level. The red line is the average, the blue is the per capita, so you see Minnesota on the right and compared to the highest nationally, and then you see the other counties here, and so you see where Houston County falls on the suicide rate. Again, these are small numbers, so if you add 1 or 2 per 100,000, it can really jump up those numbers.
Along with small numbers, for me, it's small print. Which one's Houston?
It is the fourth one over
Yeah,
to the right,
okay.
and so it's one of the lowest ones. So
You're looking at me. It's on your phone.
Oh,
yes, so this is the homicide rate. Fortunately, there haven't been homicides, knock on wood, here in a number of years, but you can see the average and then the highest rate annually, and so we're all pretty low in Minnesota, which obviously is a good thing. This is accidental deaths by type, and so you'll see that there's fall and motor vehicle accidents, and then poisoning / drugs, and so poisoning is the sort of public health terminology for drug overdoses. Sometimes that gets confusing. I saw something in the lay media recently where someone was saying unexpected, death investigation findings. We have this many poisonings every year in the United States, which is really just drug overdoses, and so sometimes that terminology can be confusing. Again, the drug overdoses, we have some more data on it. Has obviously been a huge focus across the country with the sort of opioid epidemic. As I probably said before, it was about 8 or 9 years ago for the first time accidental drug overdose deaths across the country superseded accidental deaths from motor vehicle accidents. And so these are sort of big categories of deaths that we track relatively granularly from a medical examiner's perspective. And so this is accidental deaths by motor vehicle crashes, and so this again is in high level the types of scenarios that happen: automobile / SUV, motorcycle versus pedestrian. So we had 3 motor vehicle accidents, and then what we tried to do is map this out, sort of using this sort of heat map, if you will, to see where the locations occur, to see if there's patterns or trends that occur there. And so in this first one, the colors, a little hard to see, but they're represent the type of vehicle accident, so ATV, motorcycle, snowmobile, watercraft, and so watercraft, you'll see it sort of stands out, and so, and the size represents the number of fatalities that occurred. So the small dot is 1, the bigger dot is 2, and so again, relatively evenly distributed. You do see some that sort of cluster a little bit along roads, but they were all a variety of different vehicle types. So.
Question?
Yep.
For motor vehicle accidents, do you keep track of whether they were caused by any kind of impairment?
We do have that data. We don't necessarily pull that out, but we do have
Okay.
that data.
'Cause I'm kind of a personal mission here.
Yeah.
My wife's type 1 diabetic, gets a notice from the state to go to the doctor to verify that she's got her diabetes under control to the point that she can drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked whether alcoholics get the same form, and they don't. So my question is, how many accidents are caused by diabetics versus how many are caused by drunks?
Yeah, and so we have that information, some of that information. Some of it's extremely difficult to piece out what's the driver of that. Law enforcement's often really looking more at the reconstruction of the accident and what were the risk factors that caused it. We collect the information related obviously to the individual, so we have the toxicology. We do electrolyte testing on all of our cases, so we would know if they were, had like in a diabetic ketoacidosis kind of state. We wouldn't necessarily know if they were hypoglycemic.
Right.
Those are the sort of things that can be really challenging, and then is it like, well, how much did that contribute to the accident?
But you can investigate blood alcohol after a death.
Oh yeah, and we do that on all of them, so we have that information on all of them. Law enforcement is usually the one that's trying to pull together those pieces. They'll do things like they can get their cell phone data and see if they're actually on their phone at the time and texting or that type of information. But that's beyond our purview. We get their reports, but they're the ones that
That's
are
a
sort
law
of,
enforcement.
yeah, they're sort of pulling together the whole accident reconstruction aspect.
Okay.
So, good question though. So this is the accidental deaths, just the sheer number of where they are. You'll see that there is a little bit of clustering, but those were actually different types of motor vehicle accidents. And so we had like a snowmobile one in the same region as we also had a motor vehicle accidents. And so they're really kind of different types of things. So, but those are definitely, we're trying to, just keep tabs on. So if there is a high risk location, hopefully this would at least be one way to get that kind of information. So this is the motor vehicle fatality rate per capita. Again, it's 2017. So again, in 2017, Houston was high, but that was just because of it was 4 deaths, and it was the per 100,000 rate. So if you drop that down to 2 deaths or 3, it would drop well below that average. So again, you can see the rates. Deaths related to poisoning or drug overdoses, and so there was one this past year that was mixed drug overdoses. So this is still a very, very low number, thankfully so, of drug overdoses. And so more and more of these are mixed, and so this is an area we've really had to refine our data and how we collect it. I mean, we sort of used to have like alcohol, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, opioids. Now we have subclassification of opioids and all these mixed combinations that we're tracking. And so if you look at it by drug types, you see here that this one death was a combination. So what were all the drugs that were involved? And in this case, it was benzodiazepines and fentanyl. And so fentanyl is one that a lot of people have heard about. It's been mixed in with heroin. It's very potent. There's different forms of fentanyl that are even more potent than fentanyl itself. It's been put into fake prescription pills that people buy, and so this has really contributed to the lethality of the opioid epidemic. This is looking at the number of deaths in blue, the bar graph, and then the red is the the number of opioids involved. And so this is trying to get at like how many are these mixed different types of opioids. And so people might have prescriptions and then have opioids mixed with heroin mixed with fentanyl. And so that's what this is trying to get. And so there was one death here and one opioid involved. This is the drug overdose rate per capita. That's West Virginia, very, very high. And you can see Minnesota is below that average, and per capita rates and good use still on the, or excuse me, Houston is just right at good use, number 4. So, natural deaths by all causes. And so again, this is just, seeing, make sure there's no sort of trends that would be different from different counties. What you see is basically cancer and heart disease are really the leading cause of death, and this parallels the same data that you would see nationally. You'll see that neurologic seems to be gradually trending up. One of my other subspecialties other than forensic pathology is actually neuropathology, which is studies of diseases of the brain. And I think as we see the population age, I anticipate that category will grow. With the baby boomers turning 65, there's like 8,000 to 10,000 a day that are turning 65, and so this increases risks for, stroke, dementia, and other sorts of issues. So I anticipate that that category will probably grow over the next few years to decades. So part of our aging population. So another category, which is a good thing that we've had to really get more granular, is our age at death. It used to sort of be like greater than 65 was this gigantic category, and so you can see we've had to really move the dial down the road to capture these older populations, which is obviously a really good thing. So another sort of quick way of looking at these is if you look at this sort of data and you see that the deaths are all skewed towards the elderly population, that quickly tells you that non-natural deaths are very low. So if you start looking at the data and see bumps in the 1 to 5 or 11 to 17 or in the 20-year-olds, that tells you it's non-natural deaths are occurring. And so that reflects more homicides, accidents, and suicides, and that when you see those bumps, because those age populations are not dying of their natural diseases, they're dying of non-natural deaths. So when you look at it like one of these, if you're out there just cruising around the CDC website looking at this data, when you see it skewed towards the older population, that's a very quick reflection of the death. So if you looked at some other major areas, major cities, you would see that there are huge, bigger spikes in those younger age populations. And so this is just a summary of the activities we did this year. 78 investigations, we signed 24 death certificates, went to 26 scenes, we did 17 post-mortem examinations, and had 103 cases reported to us. And so relatively stable year over year for the last number of years that we've been doing this.
What spurs an autopsy? A family request or a questionable circumstance? Or?
So by statute, there's a whole list of things that fall under our category. That one that drives it the most are sudden, unexpected deaths not in the care of a physician. And so most of the cases that we do are natural deaths. Even in big city medical examiners' offices, 50-60% of the autopsies end up being natural. But what's happened is someone hasn't been to the doctor, or they're relatively young, and they're found deceased, and so that's major driver of those kind of cases. We obviously work with the family if they want an autopsy, or for some reason they're opposed to it. We also work with them to meet their needs and our needs as well. So, and anything that would be non-natural would fall under our jurisdiction. So if you injure your spinal cord and 10 years later you die of an infection because you're a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, that would still fall under our jurisdiction, because trauma is what led to the disease process that ultimately led to your death. So it can carry on for sometimes years and decades after an injury's occurred. Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good information.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
next appointment is Dan Larson from Minnesota Rural Counties. Do you also have a presentation you're gonna show, or no?
No.
No, okay, you're just,
Packet materials?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the
we-
packet materials
I
were
saw it in
shared.
the packet, so.
Okay. Well, very good. Dan Larson, Executive Director, Minnesota Rural Counties, delighted to be here today. Thank you for getting me out of the city. So, and thanks to Jeff for squeezing me into the agenda. I want to talk to you about Minnesota Rural Counties. We've got a great message. A little bit of an aside. When I wanted to get this on the agenda, the board sends me out to talk to member and non-member counties over the interim period, spreading the message. It's a good message, as I said, but I wanted to get this one on because because Houston, Minnesota has a special place in my heart. And the reason for that is I smoke a lot of meat. And at the market, at the Root River Market in Houston, they've got the best dry rub that I found anywhere in the world.
They do,
They do.
yeah.
So I stocked up, thought I might be late, but I stopped. And I got a bag full of it, and I'm gonna start buying the 5 pounders. I talked to the meat guy. So, and not only that, but just on Houston itself, and this is kind of an amalgam of who we are as a group and who rural counties are and deep rural counties. Houston, Minnesota is a city that's a scrapper. They understand that they're not going to, that their tax base is a little shaky, that they've got to do something. They have to hustle. And so you're seeing things like the trail, the bike trail. You're seeing things like the Jeep park that they're
ATV, UTV, yeah.
well, it's off-road vehicle.
Yep.
And that's going to happen, and that's going to bring people. I know that group has a 500-mile radius that they've talked to people about, and these are good people. These are responsible riders that are going to be coming to town, and they're going to bring all the things that they bring, and they'll bring good relationships. That G group, the International Owl Center, that's a group that understands it's a moonshot for them to bring in a manufacturing plant, to bring in that kind of tax base. So they have to do the other things that are going to piecemeal something to bring vibrancy back to a small town. I love Houston for that reason, but the most part is the dry rub. So, and you're all invited. I'm gonna challenge anybody to smoke better ribs and chicken than me. So, thanks again. Minnesota Rural Counties. 30 counties. We started 22 years ago. But let me start with our chairman. Can't be here. He's in his own meeting today. Sends his regards. We're going to be doing a little follow-up with you. I want you to know there's a place for you in Minnesota rural counties. We started 22 years ago along the northern tier of the county. Our growth is on the west, and most recently it's in these southern counties. So I visited in recent weeks Lyon, Lincoln, Pipestone, and Nobles County. Tomorrow I'll be up in Kanabec. So I'm spreading the message. We're low key. You may not have heard much about us, but if you agree, like most people do, that any issue that makes its way down the hallways of the state capitol is as likely to split rural metro as it is Democratic Republican these days, there's a place for a group like this, and there's a place for you in it. Our legislative priorities, there's a sheet there, but we work with AMC. We're an affiliate organization of AMC. We like to say we're the place rural counties go to talk about issues specific to rural counties and most important. We work very well with
their staff. I've been here 22 years, so I've seen many iterations of AMC staff come through. I've worked with all of them. I've worked with 3 leaders now. Julie Ring, far and away the best leader that that organization has ever had. Love her. Works great with us. It wasn't always that way, and especially in the early days. We were viewed as an organization that was potentially a threat to AMC. That is never the way this group was meant to be organized. But the reason I should, if I got a minute, I'll tell you how it happened. I had spent, my background is in journalism. I went to journalism school at the University of Minnesota. At the same time, I worked at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Worked my way through journalism school at the newspaper. I got a chance to do an internship in the Senate, then ran a committee for 7 years, local government, veterans, and agriculture. Then I stepped off and started the lobbying side of things, so I am a lobbyist. I got a call from one of the Senate council people who had moved on to other things that said, you might want to talk to these little counties, they've got a problem. 5 counties that I literally had to look at the map in terms of where they were. Kitson, Beltrami, Lake, Cook, Marshall, Pennington. That might be more than 5. Anyways, okay, what's the problem? Well, the state wants to impose a one-size-fits-all wetland plan for everybody, meaning mitigating 3 or 5 to 1 for every acre that you impact. Well, okay, why is that bad? Because we're wet counties and that's going to kill our economic development. It won't work. Well, where's your state organization? At that time, again, 22 years ago, 2 different directors ago. Well, we're Metro-led. It's rounded the bend. It's they're on board. Okay. Who else is supporting this? Governor Carlson at the time, the PCA, the DNR, all the sportsmen's groups, and all the environmental groups. So I think you're dead. I think you just should swallow it and move on, unless other counties feel the same way you do. Well, a lot of counties feel the same way we do. Well, how deeply do they feel that? Very deeply. Okay, let's put our heads together. So I did something that I'm not sure I would do again, but I wrote up a resolution saying that we as a county board will not abide by the Wetland Conservation Act. And initially the 5 counties signed it, and then 7 and 10. And the media background, every time somebody did, I put a new news release out. Pretty soon there were 23 counties that said, not going to work for us, we're not doing it. Everything stopped. All of a sudden we got meetings with the governor's office, other groups are involved, the Builders Association, the Chamber of Commerce. It took on a life of its own. 18 months later, you had a plan that is now in existence, the Wetland Conservation Act, a 3-tiered system. 50 to 80, over 80% and 50% and below pre-settlement wetlands have different mitigation requirements. It worked. That's how this group started. It started because deep rural counties had something come down the road that hit them like a tsunami. They didn't know what to do about it, but they organized and communicated and won. There have been other issues. I mean, in the meantime, I should have done my homework better on this, but to find out and be able to name projects that have been awarded in your county and the region. But when the state decided in 2008 to tax itself an additional 3/8 cents on the legacy amendment, you had an additional $400 million every year coming into the state coffers for 4 different projects or purposes.
Yep.
Arts and parks, outdoors, clean water, and parks and trails, clean water, outdoors, and the arts. And I told my group, there's something in this for you, and I'm going to find the angle. Well, when it came time to carve up, for lack of a better term, the new money that was being distributed for parks and trails, there were two entities at the table, Metro Parks and the DNR. I told them that's where we're gonna go. They said, go get them. So we put a group of park directors together, and we started walking the hallways. And we didn't have the numbers, even at that time, that was 2011, I believe. But we didn't really have the numbers in terms of the votes, but we had key committee chairs, and that was the key. We got it written into the bill that 20% of that legacy money was now going to be put towards Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails. And what that did was create the funding and the infrastructure for what is now the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, and to fund it at a level that is at a decade's worth of previous funding, 10 years of funding every year from that year forward, 2011 until 2034, to build a brand new state-of-the-art regional park and trail system in Greater Minnesota that no other state is doing and no other province in Canada. So without this group telling me, okay, go find them, it doesn't exist, and the money goes to Metro Parks and DNR. There's other things. Broadband is a big issue this year. You'll see it when you look through our stuff. So what's our angle in broadband? AMC does a great job with Emily, and there's 100 other organizations that are under this umbrella of rural broadband coalition. Okay, so I get on the legislative committee, and we meet with the lobbyists every Monday and develop strategy. But beyond that, I said, let's put a communications team together. And with Heidi Steinmetz out of Kennebunk County, I'll be visiting there tomorrow, and with Nancy Hoffman, who was the chair, said we're going to do an opinion piece, and we're going to release it, and it's going to talk about all the right things, and we're going to release it statewide at the Easter break, and then so that when legislators are home, they're going to see this from another angle. We're not just knocking on their doors in the hallways, but they're going to start seeing it in their newspapers. Any elected individual knows and understands that it's one thing to hear somebody face to face, but when you start seeing it in your newspapers, it's amplified. So had great success, 20 newspapers across the state from Duluth to Rochester to Fergus Falls. And beyond that, I did letters to the editor that were samples that we got out to all our members and everybody in the coalition. Just take one of them, whatever looks best to you, juice it up, do whatever you embellish, but get it into your local papers. And we just pounded the local newspapers with that. And that's when we came back from Easter break, and it really helped to set the tone for a different message. As you recall, the House had a good number on broadband, the Senate wasn't that good, and it helped bring them along. So we got a nice letter from Nancy Hoffman, the chair of the coalition. In your packets is the release. I wrote it. What we did also is broadband profiles. You got to break this down, and this is just broadband. We do this for other things too. In fact, I'll just mention County Program Aid. We do the same thing. I work with Matt Hilgard on this. So you got to break it down. You got to tell them, okay, these people, Jerry and Steph Palman out of Plato, Minnesota, these are young farmers with a family, the kind you people commissioners want to see in your communities in need for a growing community. Kids and business owners. He's a farmer with a seed business. So we got these out every week to legislators. And it takes a lot of work, but it's worth it. This group hustles just like the city of Houston. Okay, we got our leadership list, 30 rural counties. This is what your colleagues are saying. In terms of if you were interested in joining, what does it mean? We try to make it easy for you both monetarily and in terms of what it takes. This part-time job of yours, I know, it's more than that. So it's a huge commitment. So we try to streamline the time that what we ask of your time. Any time AMC has a meeting, we'll put a meeting up front, a statewide meeting. Our next meeting is gonna be ahead of the fall policy meetings. We'll do one ahead of the annual meeting, and then we do one ahead of the March meetings in St. Paul. And we have a couple of other meetings just on our own, and during the session, we were meeting by ITV, but again, working with Julie and AMC, we make it real easy now. You sit at your desk, wherever you are in your home or business, and you get right on GoToMeeting platform. We started that last year, and it worked real well. So about 8 meetings a year. In terms of costs, what do you guys, Jeff, between 10 and 20,000 population?
About 18.
18
Okay, that means $2,300
per year.
annually, yep. And if you wanted to join today, we would prorate it, but, yep, $2,300. That's Minnesota rural counties.
Okay.
We want your energy, and we want what you can bring, both with your energy and for your expertise. We need to grow.
I see you haven't got down into the southeast region, so you're working down here to get more people to join?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I've waited 22 years for this moment.
Yeah.
We're doing outreach. Yeah, I actually tried last year and something didn't work out.
Yeah.
But I'm here this year.
Okay.
This is, I think, the blufflands, especially on the backside of the river, people don't know enough about this. It's one of the best kept secrets. I think less so now than in the last 8 or 10 years. The marketing's been good. But
Yeah, it's not so much a secret anymore.
it's not a secret.
No.
Yeah. I brought my fishing pole. I did.
Well, it sounds like you're a good organization. You know, it'd be something I'd be interested in looking into further and discussing with the rest of them.
You want me to come back next week, or what should I do?
You just want to get some more rub, I suppose.
Well, he'd be bringing the ribs back next week.
I'll do it.
Welcome basket.
Back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was on school board in Spring Grove, and at that point, there was a organization very similar, a rural school district organization that started. I've been off school board now for 19 years, so I've lost track of it.
You're still there?
But it was a very worthwhile organization for the school board, I know that.
We work with them.
They're
That's
still
the other
in
thing we do, we reach out. Townships, if you look at the profile on the broadband, we teamed up with the Township Association. Now, that doesn't mean that, I'm not speaking ill of anything, but it was my concept and my work and everything else, but I wanted it not to be just Minnesota rural counties. So I worked with the townships and said, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, everything I send out, you get to look at before we get it out, but I want your name on it too. And they said, okay.
So do you reach out to the cities too then, somewhat?
Well, it's issue by issue.
Right. Like the CPA thing, County Program Aid or whatever. I mean, the city and the counties got together on that one for this year to lobby for increase in that.
That was AMC,
Yep.
we
Right.
followed AMC, and I just, and the MICA group, they did all the formulations and all that stuff. And, our aspect in that was the media.
Okay.
Thank you. You've given us a lot of information, and we'll have to look it over. It was in our packet also.
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
so, and discuss it and get back to you.
Whose district is Houston? Okay. All right, good.
And thank you for your kind words, we appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I should add, next time you come down, stay overnight at the new motel in La Crescent, so.
Well, we're hockey people, there's a,
Yeah.
roses are.
Yeah.
good
Hockey
things.
arena, yeah.
There you go,
Okay, have a good day.
Thank you.
and I love apples.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Did everybody review what's on the consent agenda? Looking for a motion to approve it, or unless there's any questions?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
And, let's see. Action items. Number one, consider approving the final contract for Project CP 2019. That's Brian. Will speak to us on that contract. That's state aid 24 and 32, I think you said? Yep.
Yep, so this is Project CP 2019-05, and we added a A and a B because it's split between two contractors. So this is the portion with Milestone Materials. They provided the maintenance rock on County State Aid Highway 24 and 32. So back when this was approved, the board approved this, and we requested a 30% overrun on our rock quantities due to the overall condition of the gravel roadways this spring after spring thaw. So the original contract amount was $21,448. The work certified for the amount of gravel that they applied was $28,778 and 72 cents. So did a good job. They provided most of the rock was put down prior to paving County Road 249 and County 3 and stuff. So they got that rock down before they put all their trucks on it. I figured that was the best way to do it this year, is get some added support before they hauled all the loads across. So so I'm recommending that we final this project today, and then the second part will come later once all that rock's finished being applied, which is being done as we speak.
So we're looking for a motion to approve the final contract.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Was he gonna be involved with number 4, Teresa?
Yes. No. He's going to be involved with number 5.
Yep.
No.
4. Yep.
Number 4. Mark,
Yeah, don't leave.
don't, yeah, I was just gonna say, don't leave, okay. Okay, consider approving the conditional use permit for Robert and Heather Strand, Yucatan Township. That was recommended to us by the,
Amelia, you want?
Amelia
Yeah,
wants to
it's an
speak
address
on.
today, I think, yeah.
You're the lucky one that gets to.
Yeah, yeah, I guess I'm just here for Aaron, looking for approval on that conditional use permit. I guess if you have any questions, Bob might be a better resource, as a delegate on the planning commission. I can try to answer anything as well.
Typically, when done, there's usually some conditions to go along with it. Were there
Right.
Don't believe there were
any
on
conditions this time
Just the
around?
one typical,
the-
meeting all state and federal
Yeah,
regulations and requirements.
okay.
There was no major issues. This is a small parcel in a 40-acre quarter, but the state owns the vast majority of the rest of the land in the quarter. There will not be any other houses built in that quarter. And there was some questions during the public hearing part of it with regard to the farm use of land in the adjoining properties. And that was discussed, and they understand that, you know, farmers plow and put on fertilizer and manure, and of course, at the time,
Normal.
everybody's in agreement.
So they understood that?
They understood.
And they were okay with that?
They were at the meeting.
I know that. I know that's been brought up to me about, there's some concern about farming practices that they would be wouldn't be happy with, but if they were made clear of what was going on and where they're living, that happens.
It was made clear and discussed during the meeting that this process would continue. I mean, it wasn't gonna stop just because they built a house.
In a related question, I think, what is the goal for completion of the comprehensive plan? Countywide.
That's a whole different subject.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
I'll talk about that in commissioner reports,
Okay,
and Bob will too.
okay.
So,
Right now, we need a motion to consider approving the conditional use
I'll
permit.
make a motion to approve.
second.
Second,
Yep, Fred?
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I think we'll bring the comprehensive plan discussion under discussion items.
Yep.
We'll add that.
Thank you.
Billy.
Thank you, Amelia. Okay, consider approval of Resolution 19X, authorizing EDA revolving loan fund to Ascentech for broadband border-to-border grant. If grants are awarded. Did you read that in your packet too?
This would be, as I understand it, our matching portion of to match the grant fund if it's awarded.
Right.
But it's a loan, we'll get the money back.
Right. It's a little, did this come up at EDA?
It did, and it's different than what we would normally look at loaning for, but the need in the county for what they're doing made it feasible or acceptable to the EDA board to help get this done.
It's quite costly from what I was reading.
Yes. Yeah, overall program cost is over $10 million. I think the grant would give Ascentech about $3 million. They used the similar grant, and you heard the grant discussed, or at least saw the grant discussion in the rural counties, his presentation related to it. Fillmore County, Ascentech was able to do a similar project, same grant in Fillmore County. Fillmore funded it directly out of their county budget in a similar arrangement, funded it and it was returned. But they had previously set aside money specifically for broadband projects. We haven't set aside money for broadband projects in the past, so based on its effect and impact on the businesses in that area, EDA funding seems to be a fitting source.
So we need a motion to,
I make a motion that we approve the resolution.
Second. I'll second it.
did you second that, Fred?
Yep.
Yes, he did.
Sorry.
Further
I
discussion, all in
didn't-
favor?
Don't have my mic close enough.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Then we'll go to number 4 here. And Brian is also going to assist me with this one, but we are not looking for any action at this time. We met with La Crescent Township a month ago at their regular meeting. They met with us at the site to see the deteriorating shed, which looks like it cave in anytime. I brought it up last night, and they asked us to consider having our surveyor do a survey to see what they actually own, and also write up we only had verbal contracts with them over the last 40 years. Sam put together a written, and I think you all received that in your packet too, agreement with the township, which they last night decided they would just review. Well, after talking with them for a while, we did what we were going to do, but as Brian will probably explain better than me, we put the ball in their court. They have to take the lead in getting the structure, what plans they want to do, all this kind of stuff, before we even consider what we would do as part of our portion. Can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, so that's basically it, is that we've kind of have three issues with the township. One is the survey, so they know, if they put a new building on that site, how much space do they have on the backside of the existing sand shed to go backwards if they make it deeper, to make it a little bit bigger capacity. The second issue is that I worked with Sam and Tess and myself worked to draft up an agreement of kind of how we currently utilize that site and share it with the township. So we drafted up that, and that was sent out to the township last week. And then the third is the township wanted the county to take the lead of the design of a new sand and salt building. So I came back and did some research as far as what the cost is, and looked at things from a couple different aspects and stuff as far as what building type, and got some numbers put together. Didn't really start any design, but I pulled off what some MnDOT plans were. Was speaking with the attorney's office with Sam, kind of recommended that, ultimately the county's drafted the agreement for what we want to lease, and the county, we did some research on the building, but ultimately everything is on township-owned property. So because of that, the attorney's office is recommending that, the township's going to need to review the lease, decide is there any changes that they'd like to see, bring it back to the county, and the township should be taking the lead on the replacement or repair of the existing sand and salt shed. So we kind of provided that information to them. They're going to review that, come back to the county, or probably meet at the next township meeting in a month, and then decide at that point what they want to do. Do they want to make any changes? What are they going to propose to the county? They are looking at the sand salt building to be shared, county and township together, if they want the county to participate on cost for that aspect. They're also looking at either adding on to the existing shop or having that same building that's going to be constructed be wider so they can park additional equipment in that to be undercover, so they don't have their tractor for mowing sitting outside, and they have a pickup sitting outside. They want to get that undercover. They would like to have the county participate in the cost. We don't know at this time what the cost is going to be or the ultimate size of the building. If you look at the replacement size of the existing building, if it was going to be the same size, the county would probably have $100,000 to $125,000 to have our portion of that. If we have the building be bigger, which ideally the building would be bigger, because being that it's within the La Crescent MS4 area, we essentially can't have material stored outside. If we have a sand pile sitting outside, it needs to be covered up. We need to have quarterly inspections. Anything with salt in it needs to be undercover. We need to get stuff undercover. So what we did last winter is we hauled in material between snow events to keep refilling the shed, so that way we had material for the next storm. Usually what we do is we try to get everything that we can inside of a building, undercover sand salt mix, protected from the elements, and then you're ready all winter whenever you need it. So the new building ideally would become bigger, just to fit the county's needs on the sand and salt, bigger for the township sand and salt, and then also the additional portion for something undercover for the township. So it might become that the township would have a bigger portion of the cost. The county's portion could end up being $200,000 plus.
Would that be heated?
No, this would be just the standard
Cold storage.
Cold storage, yes. So, when we presented the numbers to the township, they said, they don't have a big budget to spend a ton of money on building. But ultimately they're going to need to come back to the county with a proposal of what they want to build or what they want to do. And then they're going to come back with a recommendation of what they want the county to participate. I told them, that if we have a longer term lease agreement, we know that we're going to be there for a long time. We know that we're going to be using the building. That's going to be a lot more, a lot better for the county as far as forking up some money. If we have a short-term lease where 5 years down the road they boot us off the site because they need to have more space, I don't think the county will want to participate very much. But ultimately it's in their hands. They're going to be coming to the county. At this point there is no set number, there is no set size of the building. They're going to be coming to us.
Do we store equipment there?
We have a motor grader, a front end loader, we have a plow truck, a front end loader, pickup, and a tractor.
Okay.
Yeah,
currently.
we have quite a few things there. We would probably own about a third of the new structure.
Yeah, if they
Just
want to get their other
our
stuff,
salt and
yes.
sand.
Teresa, you know this a lot better than I do. I just hear a little stuff now and again that gradually, and I have no idea how much property is involved, but gradually the city of La Crescent is annexing parts of La Crescent Township. Why are we building a bigger shed than we have now if the Crescent Township is losing property to the city? But I have no idea beyond just having heard that that's going on, so please explain.
Well, they need, because they are storing their equipment outside and it's really taken a beating to it, plus the existing shed is ready to collapse.
Yeah,
So
I know the need for the shed, I understand that. I was just a little nervous about the size.
Going
Yeah.
bigger is what he was getting at.
Yeah, so the size for the township, they maybe don't need that much more space what they currently have for their sand and salt storage on the township side. Overall, as stuff gets annexed into La Crescent, I don't think they're going to lose a whole lot of miles of roadway because they have a lot of rural roadways that will not be annexed into the city. So I really don't think that's going to change a lot for the townships further overall. On the county side, or both on the county and the township side, is that not storing the material outside is really what the biggest issue is at this point. Historically, there's been a pile sitting outside that's probably 5 to 8 times the size of material stored outside is what there was undercover. So now we're kind of trying to get as much of that undercover as we can. Plus, we'll still be storing a lot less material on site than what they have as of just a couple years ago.
Are we talking 2 buildings here? I mean, a hoop shed and a storage building?
I think what's going to ultimately happen, just based on speaking with the contractor and looking at costs, is that's probably going to be one building, a hoop shed that's wider, that you have divided down the middle and divided up into 3 sections. One section county sand salt mix, one section township, one
So you're gonna
section
keep it
township
separate.
equipment. So I mean, ultimately you divide it up into three sections with concrete wall.
portions.
Yeah, so the materials will be separate. This will be the
Yeah.
counties,
Yep.
this
So,
will be the townships.
yep. So I mean, that's pretty much how it is now. I mean,
Okay.
it's all in the same building. There is no wall down the middle, but one of the doors is the townships. One of the doors is
Okay.
the counties.
In the current building, you have to dump the salt sand and then push it in.
Yes.
With the hoop, you can dump it right in the building?
Might be able to. Well,
Maybe not.
yes, initially when you're farther back, but as you fill it toward the front, you'd have to probably dump outside and push it in.
So it's 1/3 county, 1/3 township, 1/3 county storage?
No township. So,
Township storage.
yeah, that is what it's looking like. It's going to be that percentages could change.
And the
depending
other
on-
building stays that
Other
we store
building
our
was
equipment in?
Yep. So we have just under half the other building for storage of
Which we
equipment.
paid for years ago.
Yep. So back in
Where our-
1980.
And
that building's okay?
That building's okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. The main shop area was built, for the county's portion, was built, I believe, in 1984. I gave the township my actual packet of all the dates, but I believe it was in '84 the county paid for. Over the past few years, we've done some upgrades, some of it because of MCIT walkthrough and PCA requirements. We did some upgrades to our shop area, so our area's in really good shape. So, I mean, it'll last a long time with no maintenance or very minimal maintenance.
But it's sitting on their land though.
But it is sitting on the
Yeah,
township's
that's-
land. Yeah,
That's
so,
the issue.
yeah, so speaking with the attorney's office, we, at first they put in there a 10-year lease, and then essentially go annual beyond that with I think a 60-day notice to get out, that the township can kind of tell us, here's your notice, you're out. Speaking with both the attorney and HR, I said, that's a pretty short-term lease if the county's gonna, with the investment the county has in there, we paid for 50/50 of pretty much everything up until this point. Go to
Should be
start
like a
putting in a
40.
new building. We should look at like a 25-year lease or something longer term.
At least.
The township last night did ask about having an out clause in there. So
About
there,
having an out clause?
an out where the
'Cause
the
it
township
doesn't
can
say
essentially
anything.
tell us at any time, even in a short term, we need the space, county needs to find someplace else to go to,
Well,
so.
that ain't gonna work.
I think that's
If
where.
they kick us out, do they pay us the money we got invested in the building?
Well,
Probably.
that's
That's
where
all
we
in the
really
fine
need
print.
to, that's where we really need to get that worked out. So,
Yes.
you know, at this time, there's nothing that's needed from the board, it's more of information. We are gonna be working stuff out. I would expect that at their next meeting, they'll probably have some recommendations to the county. We recommended that they get us stuff quicker. In an ideal case, we can review it and have feedback at the next township meeting.
Do we have anything similar
No,
with any other township?
No, we own
we
everything
own
else.
the other ones, so, the land and so this is the only one that we've been leasing from.
Yeah, so if we weren't there, what we would have to do is one of two things. We either have to buy a new site or new facility over in La Crescent area to operate out of, or we'd have to move our La Crescent operation down to Hoka, out of that facility, move our sign shop out of Hoka to
There's really
Caledonia
not
or
a lot
someplace
of,
else we could find space for it.
there's not a
And
lot of property in Holka adjoining, is there? I
We,
mean,
we don't have enough land to add on to the existing Hoka.
Yeah,
We
that's
do have a
right.
site in Hoka, but we don't want to start at Hoka because we plow La Crescent first. You know, with the traffic volumes on those roadways, we actually start La Crescent earlier, we end the day later. A lot of times in La Crescent, we don't want to start 15 minutes away from town, plus having to go back to Hoka to get more sand and salt every day or throughout the day. We'd like to keep our operation in La Crescent area. It just
Yeah.
saves us a lot of time.
No, we wanna
They-
keep the partnership going.
It has been-
And I
understand
think
that.
they do
It's been,
too.
yes, it's
from-
been very good.
They just don't know exactly what direction they're
Just
gonna
gotta
go.
get the details worked out.
Right, exactly. And like Brian said last night too, that it's not gonna happen that quickly. If they just decide to, they haven't even gone through all the information we gave them yesterday. And then they'll still have to go out for bids or decide what they're going to do, and it's already gonna be September. So before we even hear what they're thinking of.
Yeah, I think the reason why they brought up, you know, as far as the county, you know, some out clauses, because they do have stuff sitting outside, they know that if they open up the back half of the building that we're currently in, it gives them more space to work. More place to put equipment, it gets them, you know, they could get by with a smaller building if they don't need to have the building for our sand and salt needs as well, so. But ultimately, though, I don't think that's where they're gonna go. I think they wanna keep the long-term relationship going. They wanna go for many years.
Okay.
So, kind of want to bring that up. You know, this is, you know, preliminarily, we don't have anything put in the budget for next year to account for this. We don't have anything in this year's budget for a building. You know, I didn't mention that we'll have to go to probably utilize fund balance for this. I mentioned to Teresa last night that we have kept kind of a running list of where we stand with our different assets at the highway department as far as what we have for material on hand, what we have for fund balance and stuff. I can speak with our accountant over at the office and kind of get updated numbers. You can see where we stand budget wise to be able to afford participating at all.
So we would really levy for this, our portion. We would use the fund balance that's put aside for maintenance projects,
Put aside for
at least.
various
That-
aspects.
That's our idea right now.
So, yeah, something needs to be done. We do know that. I mean, that existing building, it's in poor condition, so.
Does this include fixing the parking lot? You were talking about how bad that was. Is that
That number
part
was
of this, or?
not for all that parking stuff, so. Kind of put it in the township's hands and let the township decide what they wanna do and make a proposal back to us, and then we figure the county can decide, yes, we wanna participate, no, we don't, and this is what we're willing to contribute.
But we don't need to take any action
No
today?
action at
Okay.
this time, just information.
Real quick, Brian, you gave a good update on the status of all highway projects. You want to
Yeah.
repeat some of that for the board?
Sure. Yes, so on our county construction projects that have been going on this year, most of the projects are wrapping up. On the county system, for the engineering side of things, where we hired contractors, paving is all done. We've paved all the urban section of roadway, the rural sections, paving is done, the aggregate shoulderings on. But the only thing that's remaining is the little touch-up work, finishing touches, punch list type items, and pavement markings. And throughout this next week with the remainder of this week as the fair goes on, the contractors are essentially not going to be coming through Caledonia when the fair is going on. We don't want to impact the fair. The asphalt plant is actually being moved out of the county. Some of the stuff went out yesterday. I think there's some more stuff to go out today, but most of that stuff's out. Pavement markings should be put down next week. There's going to be some seal coating that's going to be done on a couple roadways throughout this week, but they won't be driving through Caledonia once we get to tomorrow evening. Wildcat Park was also seal coated as well, that entrance road. Yep, so that was done. On the maintenance side, there's all kinds of work that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the year. There is one bridge to be replaced along Seth that's still in the works to get done this fall. One more project I'm hoping to get done this fall if we can get some permits. That's Lorenz Road, getting the old bridge and the old roadway abolished so we can turn that land back to, or so the township can vacate that land back to the state. Flood repair stuff, County 21 that was shut down has now been reopened. All the repairs been done on that. We have some shoulder rock up against the asphalt. It's open traffic now. A little bit of rock to go in that roadway. That'll be done here in the next probably tomorrow, but hopefully by the end of this week they'll have the rock done and everything will be totally done in that area. The second repair site on County 21, I haven't been out over there and I haven't heard any updates and if the contractors moved over there and started that area yet. But that will involve essentially shutting out one lane to traffic. We'll have signs up informing everyone to take turns going through that area. That repair, hopefully it's done within a week and a half of when it starts. So that'll be pretty minimal impact to traffic. County 22, the other site that we want to do some repair work on, that project just doesn't make it to the top of the list as far as priority, but I'm at that point now where I'm getting ready to tell my maintenance supervisor it's time to push it to the top and let's get it done. So I'm hoping we can get that done next week. It just keeps getting pushed down as we have other issues to address.
That other 21 repair, is that above the Store Valley Road entrance?
The other one on 21 is down about a mile off of Trunk Highway 16. The other entrance on Store Valley that failed, that's not flood related. So we're still trying to figure out, we want to repair it like what we did on the west side of Store Valley. That is the correct repair.
Yeah. That's not what you were talking about.
No, that's a different location.
So you're referring to where?
It's about a mile and a quarter west of Trunk Highway 16. It's actually when you drive on the roadway, you don't necessarily even see it. You have to get out of your vehicle or really go to the edge. The shoulder looks fine. The hill actually had some slough. It's slid away some, so we want to go up and kind of fix that so it doesn't go the rest of the way and take the road out.
All right.
The Store Valley Road entrance, the second side that failed, we tried to do a cheap fix.
Yeah, and it didn't.
Didn't work. But we figured, blading it up and trying to do stuff for $10,000 was worth the risk of doing that, rather than spending $100,000 to do it the correct way. We're still deciding how do we want to go after it the second time. Do we want to again patch it, or do we want to do it the right way? We have a few other areas in the county that are that same type of way where it's trying not to spend the money. We know that we're really tight or over budget this year, so we're just trying to keep things together.
Are you thinking you're going to get some state aid on that part of 21 that was sloughed off there that you just fixed?
No.
You're not?
Or the one on the big site that we just...
The big site you just fixed.
Yeah, so the 3 sites they talked about that we're going to, the other 2 on 2021 and then the 1 on 22, I'm thinking we're going to get state aid or state disaster money.
Right.
At this point, we do not have a confirmation, yes or no. The state has not been down here yet. They're still working on previous flood events in other parts of the state, or disaster events, I should say. So we don't know yet. I've been keeping in touch with Olivia trying to find an answer to that. So we're thinking they're going to be down soon, and then we should get our answer. But at this point, number-wise, we do have enough damage to qualify. That's without a doubt.
Did you have some numbers for that or not?
Total, we're probably going to be about in 225,000 is what my guess is now on the county side.
225?
Just based on what I know about on the repairs we've done already versus what's remaining. That's just on the county system, not counting the township and city stuff.
The numbers Olivia had said with the townships was in that 350,000.
Yeah, right, total, yep.
And we would get 75% from the state.
Yep.
75% from state. So out of that 225, some of it is materials and contracted out items. Some of it is going to be county labor and material because we want to do some of the repairs ourselves. So the budget hit is not going to be 25% of the 225. The budget hit is going to be less than that because we'll actually get reimbursed some of our labor time and our equipment time that we're using for some of the repairs on our end. So that should reduce that 25% of 225 by quite a bit. So hopefully it's not a $50,000 hit to the county or a $62,000 hit. Hopefully it ends up being a $30,000 hit. So.
All right.
Backing up to all the county paving that we did, how'd we stand on tonnage? Did we stay within?
Tonnage, I don't have all the tonnage numbers yet on the rural numbers or the urban numbers. One of them we don't have the, I think it's the urban numbers, we don't have the tonnage yet. We went a little bit over on the tonnage on the one project, but there's other aspects within that same project that are underruns. So the one project, I know that we're going to be really close to the overall bid amount. The second project, I haven't seen the final numbers or enough to know. So I think I'll have that hopefully next week.
Any other questions for Brian?
Thank you.
Nice to finally get the
Thank
roads
you.
opened up and not have construction every place.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much. Administrator updates.
All right. Well, Brian saved me trying to relay all that to you, so that was part of it. From yesterday, just to pass along, our VSO Rob has shared that the Navy Blue Water Act has been official, and the VA isn't actually taking benefits. Won't kick in until January 1st, but they have asked to start filing for those benefits. So Rob is trying to reach out to any and all that might be affected by the change in the regulations for the folks there, and start those claims process and help that. Let's see, the invitation for the Houston County Township Officers Association is in your packet, but mark September 11th, the evening for that event. And also wanted to just mention, more for public awareness and for your awareness if you see people asking, but the Census 2020 canvassing process has begun. And so that's I think they've sent out surveys and will be doing some physical verification of addresses. Right now it's they're at the address verification stage. So you may see and hear some census folks out doing that, and they should have appropriate badges and stuff from the government on that. So if you hear about people going door to door, that's what they're up to. And then I pass a copy down here. I just sent this in an email to you before the meeting. I'll share, but this is just some rough numbers put together as we start into the budget process on what impacts on a budget increase, decrease would be relative to the levy, trying to factor in the annual increase in taxable market value across the county and the change of the CPA this year from the state. So if we were to remain budget neutral, we would actually have a levy decrease. Roughly 1% budget increase would put us at a levy neutral position. So, and then our 2, 3, and you can see in the bottom there what a 2, 3, 4, 5% budget increase would do relative to the levy and budget changes. Just an idea, just to give you some rough idea of where that fits into things as we come forward with the budget. Of course, personnel costs are a big chunk of our budget, and that's roughly at 3% across the board there, so that's kind of where we'll be at. So. And the budget submissions are coming in. We're working with the department heads to finish those up, and we'll share them as soon as they're ready to share, and we'll have that discussion down the road here very soon.
Thank you, this does help to see figures.
Well, the CPA, it will be very helpful.
Yeah,
That really made
there's
a
a
difference.
10.7% increase in the CPA, so that's a
That's a good thing.
And that is not part of the lower section, the levy change, budget change, that's not taken into consideration?
It is.
It
Yes,
is?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that 100,000's already taken into consideration?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, that's good information to have.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anything else, Jeff?
That's what I have today. As we look forward in the meeting reminders, for awareness, we've got our work group session next week, and because of the other activities with the Joint Board of Health meeting on the 27th, we will schedule the closed session on the 20th in association with work group session for my annual review. And then you guys can bring that to the meeting on the 27th with any formal activity, but
I actually brought, made forms like we filled out the last time that I got in, from Gary Weirs and Tess combination here. So I'll hand those out. And Jeff is going to give his his self-performance review to us by email later this week. So you'll have that to review. Gotta pass those down maybe. And they're similar to what we did last time, I think so. Fred, do you have anything you wanna bring up?
Oh, sure, all
Oh,
kinds
yeah.
of things here. Let's see, I've got, yeah, that is just one. I thought I had 2 copies of something there. Okay. Extension committee meeting, nothing all that unusual there, except that they will be coming for a additional budget request to, I don't know how they're gonna phrase it, but to enhance the amount of time that extension personnel will have in this county somehow. Because we have involved the extension service fairly substantially in this farmer help project. And there just isn't time for the people that we have now to be able to do everything that's needed with that, along with the rest of their
We had a very lengthy discussion, a very good discussion
very
at our
good
extension
discussion,
meeting.
yes.
Because our educator that we pay half with Fillmore County. And so he's between the 2 counties, he tries to keep them 50-50 as much as he can. But he doesn't have enough time to keep up with it all. And so our regional director said with looking at getting an intern, which we had last year, they paid for it last year, in exchange for our educator helping them with some state projects. Well, this year they will pay for half of an intern, which it's about $7,000 for the intern, and the regional or the state extension will pay half of it for next year. But we did have to add $3,500 to the extension budget for consideration when we do budget.
just so you know that's coming. It'll come out in the wash.
It'll come out when we get our budget.
When the budget thing
But it
comes
was
down,
lengthy,
but
because
just so you
everybody's.
know ahead of time that that's
Exactly,
coming.
that's just,
So,
and we will see that when we get to that.
And that's just for the summer months, right?
It's just for the summer months, because they get, college people that are working on their masters or
Right.
need internship,
Yep.
so.
there was some discussion about a year-round position, but that did not get past the extension committee. So, okay. Comprehensive land use plan. We have done, Bob and I are on the committee, and we've done quite a bit with getting a questionnaire developed, or at least staff has done a lot with getting a questionnaire developed, a survey, and we have distributed that to all township officers, and I can't remember who else, somebody else has gotten that.
Did the cities?
Cities got
The city's got it.
Clerks,
okay.
treasurers, and township
And
officers.
we have most of those surveys back. I'm impressed because you put out a survey, and what percentage do you usually get back? 10, 20? Well, the 3 townships that I deal with, I got back, I think, all but one of those surveys. And I think that's typical from what I was hearing at the meeting. So that's pretty impressive. People are interested in what's coming down in land use. And that's good, because we need involvement now rather than after it's done, and then they complain. No, get the involvement now, get it done right, okay? I think most of the things that we talked about in land use this morning have already come up here. Jeff, I need to talk to you about that September 11th township time. I've got a rehearsal conflict with that, and I don't know that early in September whether those are critical or not. I assume we'll get an invitation from them. We reply directly to them, the township officers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's the annual meeting, dinner meeting, so I think it's
Yeah.
7 p.m. start, I think.
Commissioner Burns.
With regard to comprehensive land use, I had 3 townships and 1 city, that being the city of Caledonia. I agree with Fred that the townships have great interest in the comprehensive land use plan. Apparently, city of Caledonia does not. I think I only had 1 township. I did all the town board members, the clerk, and the treasurer. I had 1 that I didn't get back. From the city of Caledonia, I did the city council, the administrator, and the public works director. In that case, I got 1 back, is all I got. So, there was not a lot of, I guess, interest. They've got their own zoning
They
and
got their
whatnot.
own,
And they didn't, the county doesn't have a big interest as far as that's concerned.
To be expected.
Right. As far as the comprehensive land use, it's taking a long time to get this rolling, from my perspective. I mean, the survey and getting that put together, we've got 2 months of just trying to get that together before we send it out to the general public. I know that I know planning and zoning is gonna have a booth at the fair for public input and whatnot, just to talk to the general population, so that'll help us to get some input that way. I know a lot of people on the surveys, when I picked up the surveys and talked with them and we discussed the surveys and whatnot, the biggest issue was the 1 house per quarter. That was common interest across the board with all the townships as far as how that's treated, and they had their own thoughts on it, some more dramatic than others. As far as other committees, the finance, we reported on that, I think, the last meeting, so that hasn't changed, other than when you look at the payroll, you'll see payroll, everybody's payroll is over budget. But I think that's because after the budget was set and then the contracts were all put together, the retroactive money showed up this year to
Along with
compensate for the
this
agreement
Yeah.
for last year, so that's skewing the payroll as it stands. I went to Rochester with Jack to the SMART meeting. I'll let Jack talk about it. The only thing I found out is, as far as trails and whatnot, I should be getting a committee together of community people that are interested in the trail from here to Beaver Park. Getting through Beaver Park is a whole nother question, but the process should include a committee rather than just checking on it myself. So I'm gonna start talking to the Rotary, the Chamber and whatnot to see if I can't get a committee put together on that. And
I think,
That's
if I
all.
might just interject,
Yeah.
I think we sat next to the right person.
Absolutely.
Young lady that is in this area from the DNR, which is gonna be critical to any of it getting done, but, as I explained that day, we used to have a committee when we were trying very hard to go from Houston to La Crescent. That committee disappeared when the futility of doing that became apparent. Just too many obstacles. And as Bob mentioned now, there is a wide lane now that you can get to Holka on, but it would still be preferable to have a bike lane too. But I'm optimistic that Bob's been doing some work, and if he gets people on board, hopefully something will get done there.
Get a start anyways. And that's all I've got to report.
All I got is just a couple little things. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but 10th of July I went to board orientation for Selco board, and I won't officially start until October for that, so had that training. Yesterday I met with Doug Grout, the SEMCAC new executive director, had a one-on-one meeting with him and had a little board orientation with him, which is really good to get an understanding of what SEMCAC is doing, and a more of a personalized information meeting to find out that stuff. And we exchanged ideas and what we're looking for, and so that was a good meeting. Last Thursday, Jeff, we went to that meeting at MCIT for behavioral training for county board meetings.
It was their Commissioner 102 class, so
Yeah,
it was
Commissioner 102 class.
open
yeah.
meeting law discussion,
Yeah.
another topic, conflict resolution.
How to behave at a
yeah.
meeting.
Right, yeah. That was good. There were some good points, some good ideas to pick up on. So, and I recommend it to all of us to try to go to one of those. But it was good. That's all I have.
Commissioner Miller.
Had Hiawatha Valley last Monday, and there is going to be a part-time psychologist at the Caledonia location now, which has been the only location that hasn't had that service available. And you may know, Jeff, they're requesting a couple days or some help from our Human Services Department.
Okay.
So I was hoping to see John today and
Mhm.
talk about that, but I'll talk with you and
Okay.
And John-
I know John has been, ongoing discussions with Hiawatha Valley
Yeah.
about services provided and
Yeah.
supported, so.
And that was probably most of what I would bring back from there.
Good news.
EDA, we already talked about and approved the broadband, and all the other issues are, or loans out are to snuff, so that's a good thing. Talked to Allison, this morning. They're having a thank you dinner for Red's IGA, and we didn't have a big role in that, but she'd like some representation there, so planning on attending that. And since you're right there, Fred,
I'm probably going to be there.
probably going to be there, so that's a
When
good
is that?
thing.
I don't remember, Jack, do you have it?
When it is.
She's going to send the email out.
Okay.
I don't remember either offhand when it is.
I got it, but I
Yeah.
don't have it in my book.
And then yesterday I had a radio board meeting in Rochester, the home of acronyms, and
I know.
the one thing that, and I'm going to talk to our sheriff's department about some of the things that came up. They seem to be on top of things in our sheriff's department, but they just, I mean, there's a multitude of things going on state and so forth, so I want to make sure we're up to speed on all of it. Something interesting came down. If 911 did not work in the county, for some reason it went down, do any of you know what people would call?
911.
No, it's down.
It would be rerouted through Winona, I believe, their dispatch center.
Okay,
I mean,
because,
there is something in place.
A backup.
It
well,
doesn't
they
just-
did, however, they did have 10 counties somewhere that went down, and a young child on a farm died. Not necessarily because they didn't get through to 911, but it was an issue. And the 10-digit non-emergency number, which I don't even know what it is, but that's what they said one could call, our sheriff's department non-emergency number. And but if we have something set up, I'm not aware of it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, they do have a local number, 507-725-3279.
Right.
But, you know, like, if we have an issue with our server over here, our dispatch calls are rerouted.
Okay, and
They
that's,
don't just
but
stop.
that's what happened in this 10-county area, was that the router failed.
Oh, boy.
And so, but the other thing that I think is good to know, you could still text, even if you couldn't call. And I don't think that's publicized nearly enough, that people can text 911. But
That is a relatively new function of the enhanced
Right.
911, and as we've recently approved with the contract change going into next year, that's a new service that we will have here. And so I think once we have that up and line and running, we'll work to push that info out.
get that in, yeah. That's all I've got.
I do have a question with regard to Hiawatha Valley. Did he report, are they making progress in the new location?
Eric thinks they are, so.
I don't see anything going on.
Well, that's what I
Just
told him.
curious.
I didn't either, so I'll be talking to Eric this week again and
Okay.
try to get that moving. Oh, I would mention one other thing, just on a La Crescent basis. They had this very big bike rally for type 1 diabetes. They started in Riverside Park and went through our county down to Lansing. But one group got together for pizza the night before at Corky's, and or that, I should say, the afternoon. There must have been at least 60 bicyclists, and it was quite a nice thing for La Crescent business to be hosting. Yeah. And I'll give you a little fundraising. I talked to this friend of mine from Milwaukee whose granddaughter was riding in it. She was riding with her and the son-in-law, and I said, gee, Barb, I should be riding in that, because, you know, my wife's diabetic and I just wasn't aware of it. Can I still get in on the ride? Well, there's one little catch. You got to raise $2,000 to ride. I said, well, a week might be a little short. But the granddaughter, who's got it at 13, is now a freshman at UW-Madison, raised $24,000. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
But
wow.
apparently her dad's well connected in Milwaukee or something. But, I would hope so.
That's a nice
Yes,
chunk
that's
of it.
what-
Well done.
And I had, you already heard the La Crescent Township meeting report and the extension meeting that I went to. And you got copies of the administrator, and like I said, yeah, I'll do, next week, we'll do that. And did you see that you know, Jeff, I really appreciate you sending those little articles from your MAC.
The MACA group, yeah.
MACA group. Did you see Winona's spending 22 million on their new jail?
That's where it's at now.
Yeah, that's where it's at now, 22 million, despite all the input that they had that it wasn't needed. I know, it's
Well,
amazing.
If they will just please put in a juvenile section.
Well, that'd be, yeah.
That would be
Let 'em
worth
spend
it.
it.
Yeah, if they would.
Oh,
Yeah.
I need that.
Because that still leaves southeast Minnesota short on juvenile and on psychological piece.
It
What?
would be if they didn't do anything.
If they don't do anything, and they aren't gonna, so we're gonna still be short on juvenile and psych
Yeah.
patients.
I was too bad about that, but
That's
that's all I had.
I just
In-
wanted
in
to,
okay.
Yeah, well,
I just wanted to bring up too that I
That's
forgot,
a niche.
I was last Saturday night, I was at the Cattleman's Banquet in Eitzen. And, Allison was there and Michael Cruz was there from the extension, so, they're working hard, they're doing their job. But
Allison is really
She's
hustling, she really
she's
is.
going above and beyond what they need to do, but they had a little presentation from, University of Minnesota there too, so it was good to see them there.
Good.
I talked with the sheriff the other day, I had some questions about the buildings, and I went over and talked to him. And we were talking about that very thing, as far as juveniles and people with psych issues and whatnot, and how far we have to go, and, you know, when they closed down the state hospital in Rochester and whatnot. And the difficulty in converting our jail, some of the space that we're gonna have when all it gets done, and the difficulty, cause it's not designed to break it up. The separation and keeping juveniles separated in both their outside exercise, or the exercise facilities, and, you know, it'd be a very difficult thing.
But he didn't say impossible, he said the word was
Very
difficult.
But I wonder if our state representatives, our representatives and senators, if there'd be a possibility of if the southeast corner counties got together and asked if we could build a regional facility someplace centrally located in southeast Minnesota for that type of thing, if we could get some funding to do something like that through the state. So I'm gonna talk to Miller and Davids and see what they think about that.
That idea was floated before.
Yeah.
You know, it just gets so regionalized, you know, it's like, oh no, we gotta have ours, and we gotta, you know, it's,
Right.
just gotta be an attitude change.
Right.
Along with
Yeah.
funding.
It's a need, I mean,
Smart thing to do is Winona County would maybe have less beds and more of a, you know, incorporate that into their
Yeah.
facility.
likely it'd be a moneymaker.
Well, there's a need, so, I mean,
Yeah.
that's, the thing is that there's not a need for long, I mean, you get a lot of probations now and stuff like that, they don't have their sentences like they used to.
No long-term incarceration.
Right,
No.
right.
Last thing I was gonna mention is the county court administration meeting this afternoon at 12:30. I think we all got an invite to go to that.
Yeah.
I don't know who's coming, but
I've got a medical
you got an
appointment.
Yeah,
appointment.
I'm not gonna make that.
You're going to,
I'll be there.
yeah.
Good.
Not that I understand
Why
90% of
we're-
their acronyms, but
Well, yeah. but
I'll
we
make,
all-
I'll make a note to go today as well. I pop in and out of that one.
You sure you can walk over there?
Yeah, I'll head out early.
Okay.
Still up.
Closing public comment. Anybody wish to say anything? Yvonne? No. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
okay, never mind.
All in favor?
Aye.